Hello and welcome back, guys. The Celtic word for druid means finding or knowing the oak tree. So no one knows for sure, as I've said, where they came from, but they were very brave, fierce warriors. They were across the lands of Ireland, France, Britain and Spain. They did settle better in England, of course. People assumed the Druids to be barbaric, so barbarians, but that is not what they were. They actually were the ones that taught others, so they taught the Celtic their ways. And you would usually find that the Druids, many people that are Druidic, are high up in stature anyway, in general. They were very, very good with various languages, but they would mainly speak Welsh. They were fearless warriors, but they were also proud, and the women were just as equal as the men, for she was just as strong in battle, and she could have quite the dangerous temper. It's said that some Druid or Celts were paid by others to fight the battles needed, because they won most of their battles. In the 1st century BCE, the Romans came into Ireland, and then 60 AD, Britons came and they brought Christianity, and it spread and eventually moved the Druid beliefs to one side. Now, the Druid Celtic people didn't keep records. Generally, if there were any records, you'd find them in medieval writings or in statues that they built and left by. Now, the medieval writings, it said that someone were assigned to write them, probably a bard, but they wouldn't keep personal records. They did teach the Celtic people to not act evil, to not get involved with evil. And with this, I mean also in everyday life to be respectful. And if there were any issues that arose, they were very, very quick to resolve them. Now, the Druid priests were sort of as being quite knowledgeable, but so were the Druid priestesses. They were sought out as dryads, very high spiritual beings. They were held in very high esteem, and definitely believed to be reincarnation of a soul from a previous life most of the time. Of course, even though they did believe in reincarnation, they still believed that the soul had a journey to complete first, and that they needed permission to even gain entry into the afterlife regardless. They would be buried with their favourite items, regardless of what that was. It was said to comfort them, to find the path in which they were going to. Now, the shamrock was said to represent the Holy Spirit. It's been linked to the 3 circles of the Druids. The biggest punishment that the Druids or Celtic people would hand out is to banish a person from attending public or private sacrifices. Now, human sacrifices were extremely, extremely rare. There are myths about them happening out of honour and for one reason or another, but they were rarely put into practice. Even though they were extremely sort of powerful and seen as these warriors, they actually were peaceful. They were very, very peaceful. They did train continuously and connected with nature in a much deeper way than you can imagine. They were taught to use the strength around them within nature. So eventually they would fight, but they would not need weapons. They would use words of wisdom, and that would absolutely win the fight. They did not need weapons in the end. They were so skilled. So the Archdruid, they had a high priestess that would rule. She would be the high priestess of the grove. She was very sought after as a nurturing, very spiritual person. She was looked to as a motherly figure, you know, like mother of the grove. Now, they had schools and they did separate the male and the female, yet they were learned equally. But they did have to, you know, they would separate the male from the female in schools, something to do with concentration. There's divisions in the Druid Celtic people, and we have the bards. They would wear blue robes. They are the poets, the entertainers, and the storytellers. We have the philosophers. They wore green robes. They were problem solvers. Now, they and the bards can be put together as the philites, as one section. So then obviously we have the priests, which they wore white robes. They would call down the spirits. They would do the casting, etc. The druidesses were held very highly. They were very compassionate towards others, definitely had a soulful feeling. They would sing the dying to sleep, and it's believed that they would stay and ensure a safe journey for the soul because they were so sacred they could do that. Then we have the blacksmiths. The blacksmiths are sought as one of the most knowledgeable people in trained skills because they took the 4 elements and put it into their work. Now, they were trained on a special island, especially for this. And this is the belief, not fact. They were trained for 1 day and 1 year to be able to get their smithing skills to the correct balance. The 3 Celtic circles represent life, and the first circle is the Abrid, and this is the base of where life comes from, so where our soul comes from. The second is Gwyneth, or Gwyneth, however you want to pronounce it. This is the purity, all good triumphs bad sort of thing, the reincarnation, the way in which you'd be reincarnated and how. And then we have the third, which is the Kagont, the infinity. Now, the third circle is the very last circle before entering the most respectful afterlife, and this cannot be entered until all lessons have been learned. So the second circle, the reincarnation, will continue until all lessons have been learned, and then they shall be allowed into that third circle, yet they would still need the permission to enter this afterlife because, to be fair, like I say, it's just, you know, it's stories, etc. But it said that they still needed permission to enter, and it is possible for a soul to get stuck and on circle 2, so reincarnate, until they get it right. But possibly a spiritual advisor would then be sent to help them seek out what they are missing in their life. So the tree of life was seen to bring harmony and peace for the Celtic people and the Druid, for the sacred ones lived among the trees. The trees were very much worshipped because they provided so much for the people, and they would thank the tree spirits every day, and they would thank them loudly. They wouldn't be quiet. The cycle of life obviously is the same as the tree. They see it as the tree. You are growing with every step, you know, a different root is placed, you are pushing your way through. Now they would plant extremely big trees, and these trees, regardless where they were, home or farms or land, they believed that the trees themselves had magical powers, and anything of any importance, festivals, meetings, gatherings, was all done around the tree. They would all join together around the tree, and they would worship the tree for this. Now, there is great punishment for cutting down any trees because they are sacred and they should not be cut down. Now, it's believed that their most sacred were the dogs, the hounds actually. It's believed because they had such great instincts and the ability to track, they also guarded the underworld. And these devoted hounds, these devoted dogs that were ethereal and both physical, they would prey on people that had wronged the earth or wronged the Celtic people, but they would never prey on the innocent, and they were very devoted. They did see them like normal dogs, but with more power. Cows were extremely sacred because of what they provided. They provided food, milk, hides as well, obviously. The river goddess Boan was also seen as a cow. Again, birds, they were held in high esteem because it was believed they had powers. Just like the raven and the crows, they would be called to the battlefield. They believed that the birds could show them things that they could not see, which would be obviously the future. The boar had a lot of meaning in ancient texts. It brought strength, but it was also on their coins as well. Now, with the Fae folk, shall we say, we'll go into that in a minute, but it's believed salmon was highly, well, they worshipped the salmon too because they believed salmon had a knowledge of magic and spells and was a doorway to the world. And it was seen as one of the wisest of animals, one of the oldest, wisest of animals as well, which is really interesting because I did not know that. So, the Fae folk, as they are called, where the Druid Celtic people are concerned, for generations they held their place in the world. But obviously people can be cruel and hurtful, and it kind of something sent them running, it's believed anyway. Now they can be seen as tall, beautiful people, or they can be seen small and odd. Very different how they are seen, very unusual, obviously, not not as you would expect. Generally, you'll have them with green and red, or yellow pants, green shirts, red shoes, green dress. That's how they are depicted in their stories. So they would put on feasts and they would offer them food. They would dance and create music because they loved music, and they were seen often with instruments. Now, they were compassionate, neat, and caring. It is believed that, well, there's a couple of beliefs, not in fact, just beliefs from stories, that they went running into hiding through the Tuatha Da Danann, possibly fending them off for land, or they went into hiding from the beast that sent them scared, which doesn't really signify anything, but that's just what it says, so I don't know about that anymore about that. It's not really known, however, what did drive the Fae away. It's not really known, was it people being cruel? It's not really known if it was the Tuatha. No one really knows. Now, even though they would protect people, they were troublemakers. They played pranks. If you hurt the land, they would definitely take revenge. They absolutely love anything sweet, and obviously crystals. They love crystals too. So the Banshee She was definitely feared. She was fierce as well, but not by the council of the Druids. They saw her as a omen of death. She would scream or screech, and then they knew that a death was coming to the family, but she would never hurt anyone. Now, it's said that if her dress had blood, that the death would be quite a gruesome, tragic death. But if there was no blood on her dress, then the death would probably be more likely than peaceful death. The pulka doesn't have the best reputation. The pulka's feared because he can change into horrible beasts at night, it's believed, and when he did this to show himself to people, people would consider him a demon, even though that's not what he was, but he's definitely well known for having that kind of look about him. The marrow from the mermaids, this comes from, they're very similar to the mermaids because they have pointed teeth, pointed ears, but they can be human on land as well as in the sea. The changelings, and this is a fairy tale of sickly children. You know, Fae would swap them, and some could not hear, some could not see, they would cry a lot, and it's believed if they put the child upon the fireplace, said the chant, that if it was a Fae child, it would go running back to the Fae and the original child would be returned. Leprechauns, mythical figures. They're quite bad actually, they're very mischievous. They make shoes, generally is what they like to do. And there's a story, if you do capture one, then they have to give you 3 wishes, but then you must release them. Some say that they kept their words, and others said it was nothing but a trick. The Dollahon, rural parts of Ireland, it's a ghost-like horseman, black cloak, horrible smell, a whip made from a human spine, a cheese-like head under his arm, and fire comes from his nose. He again is an omen of death, a warning that death is obviously coming, which is kind of cool. And then we have the, wow, Grogosh, half human, half fae, came to Ireland from Scotland. Generally have beautiful red hair, white coat, can make themselves disappear. They live in caves and are very shy, but they enjoy gardening. If they trust you, they will come and chat and help you do some gardening. The brownie, bucca, or bubblecon, generally is 3 foot high with shaggy hair, brown clothes, likes cake, cream and milk. Now, if those, you know, you want to hear more of those or anything, then do look into them because there is a lot. The spirits of the dead were believed by some to live with the fae folk, but then others believed that they lived on a completely different realm. You know, they would keep returning, reincarnating until they learned everything which they needed to learn, I guess. This, you know, the soul's goal was to reach the highest realm, and then they would still need permission to enter this magical afterlife in which they entered. But regardless, it would reincarnate until all the lessons that were needed were learned. And that's the rest for now, guys. Thank you very much for listening. I do appreciate it. Love and light and